When discussing what an Australian Republic might look like, one of the most crucial things to consider is how you actually elect the president. Because at the end of the day, that is really a question of what kind of republic we want Australia to be. So the last video that I uploaded was about the fact that Anthony Albanese has made the decision to move away from pursuing an Australian Republic, most likely in light of what happened with The Voice in 2023. And I asked you guys what you thought of a republic, and more importantly, what you thought of a potential structure for electing the president, what you thought would work, what you thought wouldn't work. And you guys gave some great responses. I even went so far as to poll you guys, and more than 1,000 of you, thank you guys, gave your thoughts on a pretty simplified version of the question. And that is like, would you prefer a popularly elected president by the people, or in some form or another, somebody who is appointed by Parliament? You guys overwhelmingly agreed with me in thinking that the appointment model via Parliament is the much better option for an Australian hypothetical stable republic. So what I wanted to do with this video is look overseas a little bit and look at some potential models that do exist and consider how they might function, or how they might fail, or how they might succeed in an Australian context when it comes to electing a president through some sort of parliamentary oversight. So the three models that I'm going to focus on as hypothetical proposals for an Australian republic are the Irish model, the German model, and the South African model for electing presidents in what are parliamentary democracies. And afterwards, of course, tomorrow at some point, I'll post a poll about this, get your thoughts. Would love your thoughts on them. And yeah, let's get into it and actually look at how these models work. So first of all, the Irish system, in terms of like the continuum of direct election to just parliamentary appointment, the Irish system is more towards an open election, but Parliament has some degree of control over how this election actually plays out. In Ireland, to run for president, you need to have the endorsement and support of 20 members of the Irish Parliament. They have 174 members in their lower house, and you need 20 of them. So you need slightly more than 10% of the Irish lower house to endorse you in your presidential run. Now, that 20 MPs may not seem like a big burden to overcome if you want to run for president, but it does keep some of the crazies out as a pretty good safety measure. You may have seen over the last couple of weeks that Conor McGregor, on some Trump-aligned bullshit nonsense, tried to run for president of Ireland but had to drop out when he couldn't even meet the quota to get endorsed by enough MPs. So in that sense, it is just a broad political vote amongst the people, but there is some degree of security that Parliament is going to filter out more of the insane people who are clearly doing it with the intention of actually trying to get some sort of power. So people in Ireland select the president, but the candidates are somewhat filtered by Parliament. I don't think that is a terrible system. It's a pretty sensible one, but I think that if you wanted it in Australia, you might make the threshold a little bit higher than that, because the idea of some right-wing nut running just with some extreme One Nation, national, and far-right Liberal Party support, I'm sure they could pull together something like 20 votes in Parliament to nominate them for president. So maybe make it a little bit more than that. So Ireland's system, pretty simple to understand, the most normal. Now we get onto the German model of electing their president, because Germany is a parliamentary system. I'm sure you all know they have a chancellor, basically a prime minister, but they also have an indirectly elected president with, I kid you not, an electoral college. Stick with me. After World War II, the West German constitution was formed with quite a bit of influence, I think is understating it, from the Allied powers, including the United States. And the method for electing the president is basically an electoral college in its own weird sort of way. So the Germans don't actually call it the Electoral College over there, but it works in a similar way. It's called the Federal Convention. It is basically a massive body that meets in Germany with the sole purpose of electing the president, doing nothing else. And it is composed of every member of the Bundestag, Germany's parliament, and then on top of that, an equal number of representatives from all the German states. And they are appointed based on however each German state wants to appoint them. So you end up with a massive body. Half of them are federal representatives, half of them are state level representatives, and they collectively vote as a body on who should be the next president. So would that system work in Australia? I actually think that isn't a terrible idea, a federal Australian council to elect a president. You would have 76 senators, the 150 members of parliament, so that would be 226 members, plus an equal number from the states, so another 226 for a body of 452 politicians or appointees from all across the country coming together from a lot of different political parties, specifically to elect a president. And I think the multi-party build of a system like that would probably do a good job of ensuring that whatever candidates are put forward are broad unity candidates, somebody boring that it can be like guaranteed will not act out in office, somebody that the Greens, the Liberals, Labor, and anyone else can agree would make a good potential leader of Australia. Symbolically, not politically. Now we move on to the final proposal that really interests me, which I actually think is incredibly interesting and really should be considered, even though in the context of what is the norm in parliamentary democracy, it's a little bit outlandish, and that is the South African system of electing a president. Because I did see a lot of questions in the previous video about why do we even function this way? Why does there need to be like an independent president or separate body like a governor general or the monarch or whatever? Why can't the government just function? Why can't there just be a legislature and we accept the norms as they exist? Well, look at South Africa, because what they've essentially done is they've taken parliamentary democracy and just formalized how it actually exists on a day-to-day basis in every other country. So the National Assembly, the lower house of South Africa's parliament, whoever can scrape together a majority there, pretty much always the African National Congress, Nelson Mandela's party, they come together and they choose who the president will be, and it will be a member of the lower house. So a member of parliament will be selected, the leader of the ANC, they will become the president, they will become the head of state, the head of government, and they will run things from there, essentially formalizing our system here, where the leader of the party, effectively the prime minister, just gets the roles and the responsibilities with no governor general or ceremonial presidential middleman. It cuts that off entirely and just says, this is the reality on the ground. Whoever is the leader of the biggest party in parliament becomes the president. And that president has to maintain the confidence of parliament, just like a prime minister would. In reality, the South African system is just a normal parliamentary system, but we're not pretending that the leader of the legislature doesn't have the power. They're very open and matter-of-fact about how it actually works. So that is almost certainly not the path that Australia is going to go down if it moves towards a republic. It will almost certainly stick to the norm of other countries, particularly like those in Europe, and just find a way to pick a non-political president and try not to shake things up too much. But in my opinion, the most interesting take on a republic is just going the South African way and saying, let's just call it what it is. This is just a democracy where there is a republic. Just make the prime minister the president and just accept that that's what's actually happening in politics. There's no need for a ceremonial representative somewhere. We can just be honest about what is actually happening in politics. At least that's my take on other potential systems of government around the world when it comes to transitioning to a republic. But I love the fact that you guys were so into it, that you gave your takes, you gave your thoughts, you answered the polls. It means a lot to me, and I'm glad that you guys are enjoying this discussion as much as I am. So this will be the end of my back-to-back rambling about the Republic, hypothetical Republic videos. I sincerely hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'm very keen to hear your thoughts in the comments right after this. All the best, guys.